Just if you have just joined us, thank you on giving up your evening to listen to this presentation. I'm hoping it won't be too long, but if you could just do those little things on the screen for me, which is to mute and turn off your video. The presentation is being recorded and will be put onto the school website on our options page, so that you can refer to it if you need to during the process of the options. And then any questions that are relevant, please do feel free to pop in the chat. Okay, let's get going. So what are we doing here? The aim of this session, rather than just speaking to students directly, is to make sure that for students this option choice and the choices available are very clear, but it also gives them the first chance, along with you, to help them with some advice on how to make these decisions. And it's also to make sure it's really clear in terms of the dates that we are setting and when these options are all due by. For those of you that have got children in our older age groups or teach elsewhere, you'll know that the GCSEs have been reformed over the last few years. What that basically means is that we're back to, for most subjects, the linear course, where it's a 2-year course over year 10 and 11, and there is the exams which are more robust. That's the explanation of the change, that they're more robust as a system. There is normally a few exams for each of the courses, and it's a linear program, so that they revise as they go along throughout the 2 years, and then they're assessed on everything for the 2 years at the end. What we found as teachers is that a lot of the content that we used to teach maybe to our A-level students in year 12 and 13, we were now finding in our syllabus content in year 10 and 11. So the rigor is definitely increased significantly. And just to put a little spin on it for employers, we have had a change in terms of no more grades of A, B, C, D, E, and so on, but now we have numbers where 9 is high. And as you can see from my little table over here, a 9, a 8, and a 7 is a relatively equivalent to the old grade A and A star. And our 4, 5, and 6 is a grade C and above. It does make it a little bit confusing to parents sometimes the first time they see a progress check, so I want to raise it now, and then our one of our other assistant head teachers, Rachel Heaver-Webb, will explain this as you start the course in year 10 about the numbers and how things are assessed. Okay, so this is what you all want to hear. You want to hear about how we create the curriculum, and I always refer to people that I create the curriculum a little bit like Lego. I've got a certain amount of blocks to start with. I've got the pieces that I can use, and I have to try and personalize it for each of the students, but also bearing in mind that I've got a whole year group to make sure that we can meet the needs of and ensure that we can then timetable the whole school. So we create the curriculum in blocks. Your sons and daughters will be studying English, maths and science as a given. Everybody at the school will study English, maths and science. There will be an English language and English literature GCSE as a result of it, therefore worth 2 GCSEs. They, on their timetable, it will say English. And when it says English, there'll be parts of the course that are language driven, parts of the literature, but not necessarily divided out clearly in the timetable. It will just say English. There will be one maths GCSE, and then for science it will be a qualification called combined science. I'll talk about triple science in a moment, but this is the standard package for everybody. Now, if you're a parent listening to this right now, thinking that your child is someone that may struggle to access English, for example, everybody starts with all of the courses as a given, and then the SEN department will talk to me and yourselves in terms of adjusting anything that needs to be adjusted. But everybody starts with that basis, and this is because this is the basis that every school in the country will be starting with, and this is what the students will be competing against one another for when it comes to jobs after secondary school. The other compulsory part of our curriculum is PE. And that is to ensure that students have a good mental, physical and emotional well-being, and core PE allows this in Key Stage 4. It's not assessed. It's the one part of the curriculum that they won't get a grade for at the end. However, there are huge benefits, as you hopefully will agree, in terms of making sure that it's not all exam based in our timetable, but they have some release in the week where they will focus on their physical, mental and emotional well-being. The only swap that we do for the core PE is we offer, as many of your sons and daughters are currently doing, the BTEC in Performing Arts. Now, the reason why we allow some students to not do core PE and instead swap that with a Performing Arts qualification is because it's heavily dance based, and that element of dance allows us to still consider it to be as physical and therefore still the physical, emotional and mental well-being as a result of that. If students that are already studying Performing Arts in Year 9 would like to carry on with it in Year 10 and 11, they will select in their options form, instead of core PE, they would choose to do Performing Arts, and that will tell me that they don't want to do their core PE lesson each week. They instead would like to do Performing Arts. Okay, this is the more exciting bit, and I'm hoping that the students listening to this is the bit they're excited for. The optional section of the curriculum. So I've got an image there of four blocks of Lego, and that is because we have 4 option blocks where the students will select subjects within each of the blocks that they would like to then personalise and study. So therefore, we've already got our English, our maths, our combined science, and then either core PE or Performing Arts. And then we have 4 further options that the students can take. Each option block will be taught at a set time in the curriculum. So for example, the blue block here, option block A, might be taught on a Monday period 1, a Wednesday period 1 and a Friday period 1 per se. That means that the students can only choose one of the subjects within that block because they're all on at the same time. Option block B, the red block here, might be on a Monday period 2, a Wednesday period 2 and a Friday period 2. Therefore, they'll choose then a subject from this block and they can't choose 2 from the same block. I'm going to try and make that really clear because sometimes parents think that they can choose more from each of the option blocks. So the idea with English, Maths, Science, and then either core PE or Performing Arts is that you'll then choose one subject from each of the blocks. Now, I've already gone ahead and thought about the timetable for next year. I've thought about lots of different variables. How many, for example, science labs I have, for how many classes of science I can have on at a time, how many food tech rooms I've got, technology rooms I've got, and so on and so on. What are the members of staff? Which ones are part-time? Which ones are full-time? And so I have to be careful in my crafting of the blocks. This is not me just putting a random selection of subjects in a block at a time. They've been thought about and there's a reason why they are there. Sometimes I'll get a question from parents, for example, asking me why I can't just move an option from subjects from one block into another. There'll be a reason why I can't do that. And I've already blocked in for the students for Year 10 when they're going to fall next year, because obviously we've already got that commitment to our current Year 10s going into a Year 11s of what subjects they're already taking. Our 12s into 13s, we've already done our option process for Year 12. And so I can't move anything from the blocks now. So simple as we will then choose one subject from each of these blocks. And these are the blocks. I'll give you a moment just to digest what subjects are in each of the blocks. And then I'll explain a little bit more about them. Okay. Now, as much as possible for the students that are sat here listening to this, try now to just listen to the information about the blocks rather than trying to now think to yourself, I'm going to do that one, that one, that one, and that one. Okay. So all of the subjects are on in a block at the same time, but there are some rules about which subjects you are choosing. Okay. The first rule is that in our school, because we want to set you up for doors to be opened in your future, we have decided, along with most other schools in the country, that if you choose not to take a language, so if you decide that French or Spanish is not something that you would like to partake, then you must choose either history or geography. So if I decided that I don't want to take French, don't want to take Spanish, then one of my options has to be either geography or history. That's not to say that you could take both. So for example, you might decide to, just admit that person, that you might decide to take French, Spanish, geography and history. Fabulous. But what we're saying is that if you decide not to take French or Spanish, then you are deciding that you are going to choose either geography or history. Now, the Spanish is one that we have to consider. Now, students in Year 9 opted for this for the first time as part of their creative options last year. And there'll be students listening to this who have taken Spanish and have started to learn it this year. Those students are able to take Spanish. If you have never, ever sat in a Spanish lesson before and you have no experience of Spanish and you decide to take it as a starting point at the beginning of Year 10, you are setting yourself up for a very challenging 2 years. Without the grounding of taking Spanish in Year 9 already, you will be up in the GCSE in Year 11 against students that have been taught Spanish and learning Spanish since Year 7. And obviously, they are going to have progressed on faster and further than you may have done. So again, to protect the students, only the students that have decided to take it in Year 9 should consider taking it now. There is a little bit of leniency on that. For example, I know that we've got a couple of students in Year 9 at the moment who are native Spanish speakers that speak Spanish at home, that go on holiday abroad and speak Spanish. And therefore, obviously for them, even though they haven't chosen it in Year 9, they are very welcome to take it in Year 10. So if you haven't already started learning Spanish, but you want to be considered for it, then I would direct you to the head of Spanish, Mrs. Ibanez, who just drop her an email and explain your situation and whether Spanish is the right course for you to take. Okay, the second thing, so I've tried to colour code it a little bit. We have something called we get some guidance from the government in terms of subjects that are too similar. If the subjects are too similar, their specifications, so that's the instructions of what we have to teach and how they're assessed, are too similar, they have the similar code, something called QAN code. And if that QAN code is the same, the government are basically saying you cannot learn both of these subjects and get accredited in both of these subjects because you're basically doing the same thing twice. So that counts for us with GCSE PE and sports studies. The courses are too similar and you'd be doing the same thing twice. So you can't take GCSE PE and sports studies. So in this block, it wouldn't matter anyway. You can't take them both, but you can't take sports studies in block A and GCSE PE in block C because they're too similar. And I've tried to stop this happening this year, but in case you had a query of why a student can't take music GCSE and music technology, that is again because the QAN codes are too similar and they're not allowed to take both of them. Okay, the last one is art and textiles. Because in your art portfolios and your project-based and your main theme that you can use textiles within your course, again, they say that they are too similar. So you can't take art in block B and then textiles in block C. And then you may be thinking of why some of these subjects have got a capital V next to them. Now, what this indicates is that they are a vocational course. So whereas so far I've been talking about GCSEs being 2 years with exams at the end of the 2 years, a vocational course is more coursework based, project based. And the idea is that with these subjects, we can collect part of the assessed grade as we go through the year. So for example, I teach sports studies to my Year 10s and 11s. In Year 10, for 25% of the grade, they sat an exam. They then did 25% of the grade where they were doing some leadership, and they did some coursework based on leadership, but they had to plan and do and review a session. And I gave them a mark for it, and I sent it off to the exam board. And then when they became year 11s, they did a unit on media, which I sent off to the exam board to get a mark for. And then they did some practical sport, which again, I gave them a mark for and sent off to the exam board. What that enables my students in year 11 to do is to have already collected, at this point of the year, 75% of their grade, and they got the last little bit to go. It means that they won't have any major exams at the end of year 11, which frees them up, obviously, to revise and focus on these other GCSEs where they do have a couple of exams. To give you an example, in the past, it might have been that a GCSE subject only had one GCSE exam to sit in the main hall, and most subjects now have got 2 and sometimes 3 exams that they're sitting. So the idea of that with vocational is that you could balance your curriculum and your timetable. You could balance your time, where all these subjects that are bright yellow are not any easier. It's just that the stress points are going to be spread out throughout the 2 years, rather than it crescending towards the end of the year 11, where you'll get all of your marks. And this aids many students to get greater marks at the end. Sometimes in the past, I'll have parents say to me, "Oh, is a BTEC or is a Cambridge National really worth the same as a GCSE?" Well, yes, it is. There was a report done by, it's called the Wolf Report, where they looked at all of the quality of the BTECs and the vocational courses, and they pulled them apart. Anything that was giving students inflated grades, or grades that were too easy, or the course was too easy, they were scrapped, and we can no longer teach them. And so now the equivalent of health and social care, for example, a distinction star in health and social care is worth the same as a grade 8 or 9 in a GCSE course. We also see it the same at Ringwood School in our sixth form, and so will other sixth forms and colleges. So if you choose to do a selection of vocational subjects, they will be seen exactly the same as GCSE courses, if and when you decide at the end of year 11 to come and join us at Ringwood sixth form in year 12. It would be same with the college and so on. So yes, they are worth exactly the same, and it's a good idea to sprinkle in a little bit of vocational into your workload if you are somebody that's good at coursework, good at project management in terms of your time, and keeping consistently up with deadlines throughout the 2 years. Now, it might be that there is going to be a lot of choices over the next couple of weeks in terms of what should I take, what's the wrong thing to take, what's the right thing to take. Where do you start? Whenever I have anybody come to me saying, I don't know what to take, I'll sit them in my room and I will start with these 3 major questions. 1, which subjects do you enjoy? 2, which subjects do you actually excel in? Which are the ones that you get the better grades in at the moment? And 3, which subjects would you wake up in the morning and look forward to studying? Because as much as it would be amazing to have a very academic timetable placed in front of you and to get certain grades in those academic subjects, and what you think people might perceive as, oh, that's a good course, that will look good on my CV. Unless you are going to enjoy what you do and wake up in the morning and think, yeah, I'm going to school today and I've got a lesson in textiles, so I've got a lesson in design technology, I've got a lesson in French, then you won't score as highly. I know that, and I'm sure many people at home are in the same situation. There'd be certain homeworks that you would do first. There are certain bits of work that you will do off your to-do list and prioritise because you enjoy them more. Students are going to be exactly the same. The subjects that they enjoy, the subjects they excel in, the subjects where they wake up and look forward to it are going to be the ones that they are going to do better in. Secondly, some people might worry about their future careers, and it might be twofold. 1, it might be I'm making these decisions now already and I've got no idea what I want to do with the rest of my life. They are 14 years old and these are big decisions in terms of making GCSE choices. But there aren't any careers being 20, 25, 30, 35, 40, where they require you to have studied a particular GCSE. That's including, for example, triple science. So you would have seen earlier on in my presentation, the blocks, triple science appears in 2 of the courses, 2 of the option blocks, sorry. You do not need to do triple science to be a medic or be a vet. A lot of people think you do. Actually, if you decide to do triple science, you will decide to do combined science, which everybody gets to do, and then you'll choose triple science in the option block. You will be signing up to do basically 1.5 lessons of science every day. And so if that doesn't make you wake up in the morning and think, today I've got 2 lessons of science, or I've got a lesson of science every single day, even if you want to become a medic or a vet, then triple science wouldn't be for you. Triple science is open firstly to everybody, which a lot of schools don't do. Triple science is sometimes held only for students that are in sort of the upper sets. That's not the case for us. We want people doing triple science who are passionate about science. And our head of science, Mrs. Middlewick, would confirm everything that I'm saying. She wants people that have a love and a passion of science, not necessarily because they want to go on to be a medic or a vet. Medical courses and veterinary colleges want good GCSE grades. And so if you are going to get higher grades in combined science than you would do putting yourself through triple science, then don't choose it. Equally, I loved science at school, and so I would have probably chosen triple science. The second thing is breadth is often key. So for your future career, you might decide right now, I do know what I want to do. I do want to become an architect, for example. I do want to become an engineer. That's great, but don't narrow down your courses specifically for subjects that you think they will require. A perfect example of this is on, I think it was a Radio 4 programme about 2-3 years ago, and I use the example all the time with all my options presentation. There were a number of surgeons who were discussing and talking that they were getting junior doctors and junior surgeons through the ranks that were exceptionally intelligent and had A stars in their A levels and had gone off to do degrees and whatnot, and they're exceptionally bright. However, faced on the table with a person with their chest open and the heart surgery isn't going to plan, they actually needed problem solving and hand skills and creativity and knowing how much pressure to close a wound with, and just the dexterity of their hands in order to sew up a heart. And these surgeons were saying, actually, we want students to be very well-rounded. We want them to have these skills that they learn in art or technology, for example. And so there are lots of transferable skills between subjects and therefore future careers. So again, I go back to the beginning point. You want to be a doctor, don't think you have to do things like triple science and very academic courses if you've also got a passion and a love for technology or art or textiles, because actually those transferable skills will be beneficial. And lastly, there are some GCSEs that would give you a good understanding for subjects that you do at A level. It's not always compulsory. So for example, we teach economics in year 12 and 13 for our A level, and we don't teach it in year 10 and 11 because we don't need to. There's no crossover. But if you were to decide that you might want to do health and social care in year 12 and 13, then doing it in year 10 and 11 might be a good idea as a stepping stone onto that course. So just to wrap those bits up again, keep to where you start in terms of what you enjoy. Try and keep it broad at this stage in year 9, because you're young in year 9. You haven't set your career paths at the moment necessarily. But think about the courses maybe that you want to do at A level. Think about the smaller step first. There is a course, if you are interested in thinking, oh, I wonder what you need to do to become an architect or a chemist or own my own business. And there is a website called Careerpilot that students will use in their PSHE lessons. Most students have got a login for it already. If not, you can set yourself one up, and parents, you can actually set yourself one up as a parent. where you can start with a subject. For example, you might click in art, think I really love art. You click into art and it would give you a load of different vocational qualifications, post-16 courses, how you could help get work experience, what courses or what careers could come out of a love for art. And so I'll send that link out in the presentation, the email that goes out to parents. The other thing that we've set up to try and help you with all of this is on our Ringwood School website, there is underneath, you'll go into academic and then scroll down to a page called Key Stage 4 options. You'll come up with this page, and on this page, this video will be posted. There's also a big image already of the option blocks, and our subject leaders have created 5 to 6 minute, sometimes 10 minutes, videos about their course. So for example, this is a little screenshot of the first 4. We've got videos on GCSE art, business studies and enterprise BTEC, computer science, design technology. You press play, one of the subject leaders will talk you through the course of what you would study in year 10, 11, if you were just to choose to take art, for example. And you can also then download underneath a little leaflet which would explain to you what exam boards they use, what assessments there are, for example, how many GCSE papers they will be sitting, what percentage of any coursework is included, and so on. So it's a good thing for you to do, and I would really suggest that all of the students, when they've narrowed down which subjects out of the option blocks they might be interested in, is to then sit through and click on these videos and spend some time watching the videos. If you watch the video and you turn it off and think, oh, that is not for me, that is a good use of your time. Because if you've then narrowed that one out of the pile and you're looking at other ones that you really like, that's a real positive thing. Okay, so here's my complete caveat. Wonder Woman, I am not, and I am restricted in my own sort of scaffold of what I can do and what I can't do. So there is a few things that I need to be very crystal clear with you now. I think me laying down the expectation of what you can have and what you can't have is really important. I've already explained that you choose one subject from each of the option blocks. And I've already mentioned that I can't just move a subject out of that block because it doesn't fit what you want to do. And that's because, like I've said, I am restricted by other variables that the students might not be aware of. Sometimes, and it's rare, sometimes a subject won't run. And that subject won't run because it hasn't attracted enough students. We are a school, and our staff members are expensive assets within our school, within our business, if you think about it that way. And so I can't put a member of staff with 5 or 6 students. That's not very viable. It's not very viable at that point, and it's not very viable then for the other teachers that would then be having huge classes, and that's not very positive for those other students. And so if an option subject doesn't run, what I would do is go and speak to the student face to face first off. And I'd explain to them that that course isn't running. I would explain and have a discussion with that student of any other subject that they were thinking about as a backup, as a reserve, and how we could then work that with the block. I would then ask them to reselect for me and let me know what their new selection of options is going to be. And so bearing that in mind, what would be a good idea is if you think about what you would like from each of the blocks, what 4 subjects you would like to do, and then think to yourself, if one of those, 2 of those weren't to run, what would be your backup reserves just in case? Sometimes we get the other thing happening, which is where there might be more students wanting to do a class than we can actually fit. So, for example, Hampshire County Council has been round, they come around every couple of years to check the size of our technology workshops. And they will look and risk assess the machinery that we have in the room. And they have said to us that we can only have 22 students doing a GCSE design technology course and engineering course in one of the workshops at one time. Therefore, if 24 people want to do technology, I can't have that happen because it wouldn't be safe. It's same for 21 for photography. If it goes above that, then I can't make that work. What I would do, I will do, when I get everybody's option forms, I'll see what I can do in terms of shuffling people's options around. So you would have seen, for example, that geography appears in more than one block. And sometimes where a student has selected certain things, they've chosen technology, it's 24 doing technology, actually I can get them in the other technology class and move their geography around, for example. So as a first state, I will do my best to shuffle things around as much as I can in order to make sure that students can do the courses that they want to do. But if it does attract more than I can cater for, and there's an oversubscription, we follow our oversubscription policy, and that's so that it's fair. So what we will do is we will then allocate the spaces available according to the students' behaviour records, their achievements both within and outside of school in that discipline. So, for example, in the past, we've had an oversubscription for photography. I've had to download the behaviour report from those students, and I've rank ordered the students in terms of the amount of behaviour points that they've attained. And most parents will think that this is a fair system, so that the students that do the right thing consistently throughout all of their schooling life have the opportunity to go and study that subject. Like I've said, I hate using this little bit here, but it's the only way that I can make things fair in terms of ensuring that students get the courses that they would like to do. Who can you ask for help? So students listening to this, I would really want you to discuss things at home. After this presentation, have a chat with one another and think about the courses that you're thinking about doing. Parents and carers, and I'm a parent myself, it's very hard sometimes to persuade our children to do the things that they should do, or we think they should do. We're not the ones that are going to be getting up every day, going to school and sitting these subjects. And so I'm sure, without telling people to suck eggs, the students do have to have bought into this. They have to want to do what you maybe want them to do as well. And so a big discussion about it is really key. Parents and carers, you also can speak to us. We've got Parents' Evening on Tuesday, the 15th of March, as well as contacting me directly if you need to. Tutors will have been given the presentation. They know what the option blocks are. They know also the rules of things that are not allowed to be combined together. And so students going in the morning to your tutors and having a little chat with them, talking through what you're thinking at the moment. If you've got any concerns where you're trying to weigh up between two different options, do speak to your tutor. Mrs. Lewis will always be on hand to have those conversations with you. And particularly Mrs. Lewis's really good position that she also works within the SEN team. If you're a student with more needs and you would like to have those conversations with parents with Mrs. Lewis, then you can do too, as well as contacting me directly. And then what you will also find is over the next few weeks, the subject leaders, so the heads of subjects as well as the subject teachers, might start talking to you more about their courses that they offer in Key Stage 4. So, for example, as a PE teacher, I know that Mr. Owen is going to be talking to our Year 9s about the differences between GCSE PE and Sports Studies, so that people know a little bit more about what they might be signing up for. And then lastly, this one's a big one, the Options video website. Going to that link and sitting and watching those videos will allow you to rule out some options and to get you excited about other ones that you would like to take. So what now? And I'm sorry that I've spoken almost at you for the last half an hour. There are certain things that need to be done. One, you visit that options page on the school website, you watch a few videos, and you look at the blocks and think about which ones you would like to do. Talk at home to your parents and carers, as well as the teachers at Parents' Evening. And then 3, I will be emailing tomorrow morning all students directly with an options form. And this is an online form that students will be aware of because we've used them quite a bit through a school, especially during lockdown over the last couple of years, and you used the same sort of form when you told me about your creative options choices. The form will be emailed directly to your email account, and that is because when I then export all of the option forms results, I'll get your email address and your first name and surname, and that will allow me to have to ensure that nobody is missed. You will then fill that form in with consideration. What you don't want to do is, as soon as I've emailed it tomorrow, is fill it in straight away and say I'm done and that's it. But then in 3 weeks' time, change your mind and try and redo the form again. Please consider what you are going to be writing down, which subjects you're going to be clicking, and then send it off. The deadline is in nearly a whole month's time. So that gives you next week, which is half term, to maybe watch those videos. It gives you the following week maybe to chat to people at school, teachers, subject leaders, and their form tutors. And then the last week we have parents' evening in the week where the option form is then due. And so you've got a load of time between now and the 18th of March to have input from people to really guide you into making the right decisions. Okay, I have just stop that share for a second. Rambled on quite significantly.
There was a question I wanted to ask you, Mrs. Barker-Garrett, if that's okay.
Go for it.
I wasn't quite sure, so needed your specialist advice as to whether engineering and design technology are advisable or not allowed together.
Yeah, you are allowed to do those two courses, and it is one that I had to check 2 or 3 times. But you are allowed to do design technology and engineering. I would consider it myself, and speaking to the technology team, because the workload and the times where projects are due are very at the similar times of the year. So when you will be doing your final project in design technology, you'll also be doing it in engineering, and that is obviously making a crunch point for yourself. So it would be one to consider, maybe speaking to Mr. O'Rourke in design technology about his advice on that.
Thank you very much. And I'll just clarify the PE question that I've answered, but I think I've answered it in a confusing way, which is that PE is on everybody's timetable. That's a core subject. There's no examination in that. That's just to ensure that there's health and fitness all the way through until the end of compulsory schooling at the end of year 11. But students can opt to do a GCSE in PE or a vocational option, which is OCR sport. And that's what Mrs. Barker-Garrett was saying just now, that Mr. Owens will be talking to the year 9 classes about the difference between those two qualifications, so that students know what they're opting for if they're interested in City PE as an exam rather than just as a subject.
Exactly that. And it's very similar to the science sort of situation. Everybody does combined science. There is a qualification of 2 GCSEs in that. But then you could take the triple science as well as one of the Lego blocks underneath.
And there's another one which is like quite a specialist question for you, Mrs. Barker-Garrett. What's the difference between a vocational and a VCET?
They're exactly the same. So a VCET is a vocational course. So vocational, the word vocational just basically means that you learn by doing. You learn as you go along. And so a VCET is that you would be, that for example is in hospitality and catering. You would be learning by doing and then getting assessed as a result of it.
Thank you. I don't know if you can see the next question, which is, could you please explain what baccalaureate options mean, or whether you'd like me to do that one?
I'll leave that one to you.
Oh, thank you very much. So what exists in our system in England is something called the English Baccalaureate, and that's the government sort of measure of a school where the number of students who take what would be called a baccalaureate curriculum. So that's English, maths, science, history or geography, and a modern foreign language. The number of students that take that sort of very traditional type of curriculum. It doesn't make a difference for the students themselves in terms of they don't get a certificate if they have got the English Baccalaureate, if they study those GCSE options. However, schools across the country are all monitored on their number, because that is the government's kind of preferred, very standard, broad and balanced curriculum, which is why they look at how many schools offer that particular curriculum. But as Mrs. Barker-Garrett explained earlier on, we do particularly want our students to make sure that they do have some academic rigour to their curriculum, which is why we say, please do a modern foreign language. And if you don't do that, please do history or geography. But of course, you can do both of those things and big combinations of those things. So I hope that makes sense. But in terms of your children, no, you don't get a special certificate or anything like that. Mrs. Barker-Garrett, have you been reading these as you've gone along?
I've just tried to scroll underneath when you've looked.
I think our next question might be, what's the difference between business and enterprise?
Yeah, so my advice would be to go watch the videos. The video explains the difference between them. And then I've got one on here that says about food and nutrition and hospitality and catering. They are quite similar, I must admit, but the government doesn't think they're too similar. So you can actually do both of those.
There are all sorts of quirks in this. Somebody somewhere sits in an office and decides what's okay and what's not okay, and we just have to sort of follow what they tell us to do. We've got an interesting question here. If there are 5 GCSEs in the key subject, 4 options, are students getting 9 qualifications?
Yeah, so we've got 4 in the options block. Then we've got double science or combined science. We've got 2 qualifications for English language and literature, and mathematics. So we've got 9 in total. If students have decided to swap their core PE for performing arts, that's when they get the 10.
Absolutely. But actually what the government has said and what it's really focused on is deep knowledge and deep understanding. So many years ago, we used to do things like 14 GCSEs when you could do some in year 10 and you could do certain IT qualifications that gave you 4 and all sorts of things. And at that point, it was about volume of qualifications. It's now about quality of qualifications. So 9 is a really good number in terms of having enough curriculum time to be able to study each and every subject in lots of depth. And exactly the same thing has happened at A-level. There's been a move away from the 4 subjects, which we had for about 20 years, back to 3 with a really deep understanding of each of those 3. So fewer qualifications at a deeper level, which sort of explains the way that the curriculum across the country has been going. We've got a question here, Mrs. Barker-Garrett, about how food and nutrition and hospitality and catering differ. I wonder if the advice is to watch the video.
Exactly the same. Watch the video because it's the subject leader who is the specialist explaining it. And if I try and explain it, I'm definitely going to do a bad job of it. So I guess my key difference between them is one is a vocational course. That's the hospitality and catering. Food is a GCSE, so they'll be assessed slightly differently. But watch the video and then you can see what the content is behind it.
And also, if you're doing food at the moment, talk to your food teacher because they're teaching both of them. They'll be able to tell you in lots of detail about the day-to-day life experience of each of those different courses. And we've got someone here just saying, what you said about the parents' evening.
So the parents' evening is the last week of when the options block is, and the form is in. I'm just double checking that, and it is Year 9 parents' evening, Tuesday, the 15th of March. So about a week before, that's when you'll be sent a link by the school in order to sign up for parents' evening. And so if you're thinking about, for example, carrying on with design technology, then make sure that you've got a parents' evening appointment with design tech. If you're thinking about doing a course where it's not taught at the moment, so for example, you want to do business studies or enterprise, but you would like to speak to somebody, then on the information where I said that you could download a form underneath the video, there is a link there to the person that's in charge of that course, and you can email them directly if you've got a question specifically for them.
And we've got a question there about which options fit well with what is currently the technology pathway, please.
Sorry, I don't quite understand the question. Which options fit well?
You see it. So I wonder if someone's taking technology, what other subjects should they take, perhaps?
So for the technology pathway that they're doing in creative options, they would have studied a little bit of engineering and a little bit of design technology. So once again, if they're doing that, then speak to the design tech teacher over the next couple of weeks to find out the real difference between engineering and design technology, and then you'll be able to choose which one.
Absolutely.
I can see the question there about, is there anything to say you can't choose a vocational subject from each of the blocks? Yes, because unless you are taking, if you're taking French, that's a GCSE. If you're deciding to drop French, you're taking either history or geography, and they're both GCSEs. So you'll have at least one GCSE course. There's nothing to say that you can't then choose 3 vocationals. So 3 would be the maximum that you'd be able to select. And then it's either going to be French, history or geography.
Thank you very much. And there's a question about parents' evening being in person. We had made the decision at the beginning of the academic year just to move all of the parents' evenings to virtual for this year, with lots of changes of not being quite sure what was going to happen with the COVID situation. So the up and coming one in March will absolutely be a virtual one.
Yeah, and then if I answer the next 2, one is about when the form comes into me. I am not going to look at what students have written on their forms until the deadline day. On the deadline day, that's when I'll export all the forms off. So it doesn't matter if they've done it tomorrow morning or the day that it's due in. And actually, I prefer them to think about it a little bit more and be more considered in their approach. If, however, they are late, I think it is a life lesson that they might not get their options. So on that deadline day, that's when I export, and that's when I spend a few days having a little look at the numbers within the of the classes. And then the second one was, can EP be used as an alternative? No, it's French, and if you French or Spanish, and if you're not doing French or Spanish, you are choosing history or geography.
And that's another example of where somebody has decided what a humanities subject is, and somebody somewhere has said that's history or geography, and it's not EP. And that's just how the rules have been written, unfortunately. But you can also do EP,
which is a very good course.
Absolutely. Okay, I think that's the end of our questions.
I think so too. Okay, should we pause it there then? I'm going to stop recording